Hi everybody, my name is Kate and I'm the webmaster for the Guy Finley Now website. Thanks for joining us here in Oregon. We are with Guy today to answer your questions and we're just going to jump right in to do it. So our topic for today is step out of the flood of negative thoughts and feelings. Do you have some remarks you'd like to kick us off with?
Yeah, I do. There's a very old saying, maybe it's not popular anymore, and only really old people know it.
Tell us what it is, we'll let you know.
If you lay down with dogs, you'll get up with fleas.
Right.
You don't have to really belong to the era from out of which that sagacity comes to get the gist of it. You lay down with dogs, you're going to get up with fleas. Why are you going to get up with fleas if you lay down with dogs? Because dogs and fleas generally go together. Of course, not anymore where people pay $200 a week to have their dogs shampooed and groomed, but that's another story. Who's at fault if I get up with fleas? Who's at fault if I'm negative? Is it the dog's fault? Is the dog responsible for the fleas that are on me? You can say no. I know some of you are saying, well, of course not. And yet the fact of the matter is our perception is completely different than that. We look at life and then let something inside of us direct us to lay down, take a nap with those states, embrace them, cuddle up with that sense of anger or frustration or fear. And to be perfectly clear, so that you understand it, the fact that you may sit and say, no, I hate these negative states that I'm in, your hatred of a negative state is you laying down with the dog and picking up the flea, and our resistance to the negative states. Think about this. Something happens, and doesn't it have to be anything particular? I might just get up, in quotes, on the wrong side of the bed that the dogs were in. I just negative today. I don't have a particular reason until I look at you, or until I'm someplace where somebody says what I don't like, and then I absolutely know why I'm negative. And so, in that moment where I lay down, translation, I give myself over to the dogs of those dark states. I give myself to them. None of us want to think that we do that. But the fact of the matter is we do. And one of the reasons that we give ourselves to the dog states, to the dark states, is because something inside of us is directing us, A, to identify with the feeling, to think about it, to think from it, so that in doing so, and here's the scratch, the itch that can never be scratched, I identify with and derive my sense of self from whatever the state is that I'm stewing in. When I do that, I get up with fleas. Meaning when I get up, when that negative state, I've been in that negative state, I am worse off for being in it, not better off. When we're negative and we're thinking about how to free ourselves or who's responsible for the way we feel, some condition that we're looking at, calling it the culprit for this suffering. When we do that, our situation gets worse. Because I was going to tell a story as I was thinking through this. You know those old English movies, maybe like Braveheart, or those stories where in the old wars, where these poor conscripted soldiers, you could see they were as pasty and white and dirty as a human being could be after having marched for 48 days with their armor on and blistering heat. And you look at them, they look horrible. You know, they're horrible.
Like something the dog
Yeah,
dragged in.
like something the dog dragged in. And then just for fun, let's say one of the men in this small battalion, he gets pointed to by everybody else as being a snob and above all the rest, because he won't lay down, he won't sleep with them. And in case it's not clear, in those days, for warmth, you would sleep with the dogs. They used to call it a 3-dog night in Alaska. That's what a 3-dog night is.
I wondered about
so
that.
cold that you sleep with the dogs. Well, sleep with the horses in the barn, sleep with the stock that carries you there. And this one man wouldn't do it. And finally, they're calling him out, and they say, well, what's wrong with you? He says, well, let me point to you. He said, have you noticed that you don't sleep well the last 6 weeks? Yeah, I don't. Why not? Because I itch all over the place. Exactly. And why do you itch all over the place? I don't know. Because you've got fleas. Yeah, it's the fleas. Well, where do you think you get the fleas from? I don't know. You get them from what you're sleeping with, and they make your situation worse. When we're negative and we get solutions to our negativity, someone to blame, something to do about our negativity, some plan, we think that we have scratched the itch being the negative state. We have not scratched the itch. We have been led to make a condition in ourselves worse, because whatever conclusion or solution we come to when we're negative as to how to get rid of the pain is always the negativity, that nature continuing itself through us. And this cycle goes on and on and on. It is, I tell you, it is extraordinary, and I pray it for you, that one day you can be sitting in your house, you can be driving your car, you can be in the midst of a meal with somebody, and you'll suddenly see that you're negative. You're not negative for a reason that you know. You're just negative. Mm-hmm. You're just negative. And then, although you have to see this for yourself, in the instant that the negativity is illumined by something that isn't you, that same negativity, in order to protect its posture, its place in you, which is essentially to create a very painful kind of tension, the minute that it is noticed, or certain conditions allow it to express itself more violently, then it will have a reason. Then it will find why it is what it is. And what you must understand is that that negativity is a certain state, a certain level of being that is present in us, but that we do not have to be the prisoner of. When you lay down with a negative state, when you identify with it, when you in any way whatsoever agree to whatever it's trying to get you to express, including just sitting someplace being negative, you've laid down with the dogs, you're going to get up with the fleas. In the real world, you would know it if you laid down with a dog, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. But you don't know it when you sit next to somebody and they start to complain to you about their life. You don't think to yourself, I'm laying down with a dog. But you are. We're not castigating the human being. He or she doesn't know any better than to do that. That's just their level. Their level is to resist their own pain. When they resist their own pain, there's nothing they can do other than to look for somebody to share it with or to blame for it. That's all that level can do. Share it. With, the saying, with friends like you, who needs enemies? Right. Share it or blame for it. That's it. And we have virtually no awareness whatsoever of the dog-like state of a mind in the dark of itself. and how it has already agreed to lay down with these negative states. A part of you has agreed to hate life. But when we're negative, we don't think to ourselves, we're hating life. Have you ever wondered why it is that you can be what we would maybe in a neutral state, and then one thing, something somebody says, something the way somebody looks at you, and out of you can come an unmitigated violence, an unmitigated fiery breath, if you don't like the idea of violence. Haven't you ever wondered where that comes from? I'm telling you where it comes from. It comes from a human being who is embroiled in a negative state without knowing it. And the reason they don't know it is because something has convinced them to come lay down with me. Come, let me give you a reason for why I'm there. Come, let me show you what to do about this negativity. You lay down with a negative state, you get up with the fleas. You get up with a condition worse than the original negative state. So step out of the flood of negative thoughts and feelings sounds as if some flood is coming at us from outside of us. But it's not coming at us from outside of us. The flood of negativity is an interior condition produced inside of a mind asleep to itself as it resists its own level, as it resists a certain degree of suffering inherent in life. And not knowing what to do with itself, it must find something to console itself with. So, to wrap up the first part of this talk. Don't lay down with negative states. People say, well, what does that mean? How do I not lay down with a negative state? Don't lay down with a negative state. Don't lend your mind to any consideration as to what's wrong with you or someone else. Don't lend your mind to any consideration of what's wrong with you or somebody else. Not a split second. Why? Because you're laying down with a dog. You're going to get up with fleas. Don't lend your mind to a regret. Don't lend your mind to a problem that you see coming in the future that fills you with fear. Not that you don't do what's practical with regards to that, but we're not talking about practical. One day you will see that there is almost no moment, at least at this present level of development, that you're not walking along. Have you ever seen the films where the people are heroes or whoever, and they're walking through a swamp, and there's just a little bit of a raised path, and they're making their way through that part? One day you'll understand that a lot of our life is walking along a little raised path, and that to our left and right, meaning to any one of the opposites that wants to involve this sense of self in the dog life and in this negativity, it's always like in the movies you see these evil sprites and spirits reach up from the swamp to pull you down. There is something that is trying to pull you into those murky waters. And the fact is that those forces, those parts of ourselves, they have no authority. They can't. Nothing in the world can make you negative. Nothing in the world can make you negative without you agreeing to lay down with the negativity. Period. The more you understand that as a result of seeing that in your life, the more sensitive you'll be to all the circumstances where, how many of you know if I say a depression called for me today? In the New Testament, Christ said Satan calls. A depression called for me this morning. I was sitting there, I was doing my stuff, and a depression called for me. Now, when a depression calls for you, does it go, hey, I'm like the devil of the darkness dragging you down into the depths of despair. Come on. Mm-hmm. Does it do that? No. Does it say, we're going to have a grand old time. Join me. Does it do that? No. What does it do? It just pulls. It just sits like a weight waiting for the appropriate part of itself already seeded into your nature to tell you why you feel that pull. And the minute that you agree with the feel of that pull, you have laid down with the dogs. And then you get up, having been not only drained of your blood, of your lifeblood, so to speak, but full of all kind of itchiness that you don't know what to do with because your situation has not been improved. It has been exacerbated by the degree of your identification with that negative energy. Don't lay down with dogs.